Hey everyone, it's Sean. I had a plan to make some guides relating to up-and-coming guilds and raid leadership and officers in guilds. After raid leading and guild leading for over 4 years now, I feel like I have enough experience to talk about this topic and possibly help out new guilds or people who may want to create a guild or possibly even step up and take control of a guild, i.e. raid leadership. So the purpose of these videos is to help out new players. Do not treat these guides as highly professional or for guilds who are high-end and are looking for in-depth knowledge. The videos will have basic knowledge for new players to understand and get into the raiding scene, and then build up with experiences of their own. So in this video, we'll be looking at applications and why they are important to a raiding guild. I'll briefly discuss guild types and how they should reflect in the application process. So first off, the application I'm looking at right now is from my alt guild, which I am a raid leader of and guild master of. The application shouldn't be the same and never will be the same from guild to guild. People prefer to set up their application process differently, just like a job would set up their application process. They like to use different questions, maybe to probe, invasive questions, but the general gist is that an application should have some questions which can probe for answers, and some questions which allow the applicant to show off their ego, just like a job would. They're looking for you to sell yourself. That's what every application should be. The applicant selling themselves to you like a prostitute would. So, question 1, we ask for our participants' age, class, item level, spec, country, and their armory link. I'll discuss each of them briefly right now. So for age, personally, I do not discriminate. I would happily raid with someone who's 12, 30, 40, 50. Asking them for their age just allows me to get a general idea of how I expect them to behave. More or less stereotyping, but in a good way. Like in this case, our applicant is 22, so I would expect him to be somewhat mature in his writing and in the way he raids. If I had an applicant who's 12, then I wouldn't expect their application to be set out professionally, and I wouldn't expect them to behave like a full-fledged businessman. The class, obviously you want to know what class people are playing. That's pretty standard. The item level, in some guilds they want a specific item level. Just like in our guild, we asked for, I believe it was 690 at the time. This application's a bit old. The spec, you like to know what specializations people are good at. It helps to get some more information, do some background digging. The country, same for age. If you raid with a lot of people like I do, I raid with Scandinavians, people from all over the world, so I have a pretty good general knowledge on how people behave, how they react to people in their own country. And it also lets me tell them, okay, so this application's from Netherlands. We don't have anyone from the Netherlands in the guild, but if this person was from, let's say, Sweden, my alt guild is heavy Scandinavian, so I could say, well, I'm sure you'd fit in here because we have a lot of Danes, Norwegians, and Swedish people. The armory link basically is so I can take a look at their armory. It's pretty standard. So I'll talk about how much information you generally want in an application. Obviously, World of Warcraft is a game. It's not a real-life application to a job, so you don't expect people to put in as much information. That being said, you do want enough information to get a good idea. Generally, I ask for 10 to 15 minutes on the application overall, not just in each section. I mean, that'll take you over an hour. Obviously, if you're applying to a guild like Method, Serenity, Rapid Eye Movement, Paragon, then they would most likely want 10 to 15 minutes on each section and more with references and other stuff. But for a guild that's up and coming, or a guild that's somewhat established, they more or less won't expect you to write a novel for their application, but they would expect a decent amount of information which is summed up nicely, which you have right here. So he tells you his name, where he's from, he's telling you his future plans, which is a good thing. He wants to do biology, so we know that maybe he'll want to take time off. He's playing a rogue, he tells you his spec, gives you his item level, he tells you that he's going to change, and that he's adapting better to a different playstyle because of his gear and his armory link. Nice and summarized with information which is easy to look at. What guilds were you in and your reason for leaving them? More or less this will be in every single guild application. It's standard and it's something which has been used for generations. It's so you know if someone is a guild hopper. Now, a guild hopper is basically someone who jumps to a guild, gets a kill, gets some gear, doesn't like it, leaves, and keeps doing that constantly. You never want a guild hopper because they are not trustworthy and not reliable. It also lets you to see if you can pick up in any of the guilds. Like if someone applies and says, oh yeah, well I raided in Method in Wrath of the Lich King and I did so many bosses and I moved into a different guild. And you can see how people have progressed over a year. Usually I do like people to put their world rankings. So if someone said, oh well I raided with this guild in Mogish and Vault and we got world 400, and then I went into a different guild in Halfir and got world 200, you can see how far they've progressed. This is pretty basic, so tells you that he was in not a lot of guilds, and they all disbanded, more or less. It's pretty sad. Previous raiding experience, just like question 2, this will be in a lot of guild applications because people like to see where people have come from. Usually, again, I like to see world rankings, but this is pretty standard. You don't need a lot of writing for this. Put the tier and put how many bosses you killed. Question 4 is usually quite optional. Posting an image of your UI, it's not very popular in most guilds. Some people just like to see if a player's messy, but to be honest, a UI doesn't make or break a player. Like me, my UI is pretty disgusting, but it's how I play. Every player is individual, so you should never look at someone's UI and think, oh, I'm not accepting them because it's not pretty. What made you apply? A question which I feel brings the player closer to the guild. In most guilds value individualism and the social side, and not just raiding, just like I do. I like my players to have fun, create friendships, feel relaxed. So this is, he's being honest. He saw the advertise in a trade chat, and he wants to get into a guild that's going into Mythic, which that was a long time ago, and to get back into the game. And obviously someone called TinaTurner, that's myself. Obviously, if the guild is more established, then you would ask for more. But for my guild, we were looking for players in trade chat, so usually question 5 was, well, I saw the advertisement in trade chat, so I applied. He's being honest. I respect honesty. Battle tag, so you can be contacted. A quick disclaimer as well, I'm not giving you these questions to say this is what you should have in every guild. I'm giving you set questions as a way to relate. If you're looking for some guidance, am I missing any questions, what should I add, what shouldn't I add, then you can look at this and think, am I missing something, or you can possibly add to my application. I'm always looking to improve my old guild. Future goals, obviously this is related to Warlords of Draenor only. As the expansions progress, you'll want to change it. So you know what people want to do. Do people want to succeed? Do they want to be the best at their class, best in the guild, best in Europe, US, whatever region you're in? It's good to know how much people want to strive to improve. This question is pretty standard. Logs. If your guild wants logs, you don't want to bring someone in on a whim and assume they're a good player. Logs show how good someone is. recommendations, which is usually optional from what I know. Letting people know, yeah, I know this person in the guild, he's a full-time raider, we've raided in the past. If you ask him, I'm sure, or her, they can tell you that I'm a good player. Now that helps, makes things a lot easier. These two questions are some which I added on my own. So being able to play your OSPEC is a huge benefit. What is your OSPEC and are you willing to play it in raids if we ask you to? Mainly because we used to have people who would come as DPS and had a healing OSPEC but wouldn't play it because they refused. Or people that had a tank OSPEC and wouldn't tank because they're too bad at tanking in general. So this tells me, okay, well, I'm recruiting a Shadow Priest, he has a Disc Priest, has a Disc OSPEC, and he loves playing it. Cool. We're down a healer, you can heal. Nice and easy. Makes them a much more diverse player. And question 11. We raid at a much smaller schedule than most guilds. Because of this, we only recruit players who can perform to a level which allows us to maintain our casual raiding times. So for most guilds, people like to raid less than more now. They look for guilds that raid 9 hours instead of 12, but still get the same progress. Obviously, to maintain that progress, you need to have good players. So a question like this lets you know that, yeah, I understand that you raid on a small schedule, and I promise that I will give it my best to make sure that I'm on time, I'm simming all my gear, I'm reading up. You can trust me to be I give it 100%, or 110% for that matter. Now, the reason why applications are important rather than just inviting them to the guild, it lets you look at the person behind the screen as well. Who am I inviting into my guild? I mean, it could be a complete psychopath or someone who's completely terrible at the game. Obviously, some people don't like making applications. Those are people who you do not want in your guild. It seems quite unfair, but if you're watching this video and saying to yourself, I want to make a successful guild, then you cannot invite people who don't want to put in the effort. It comes with trial and error, and as a new guild master or officer or raid leader, you learn from your mistakes and the guild's mistakes. You just have to let yourself make them first. I've kind of contradicted myself in saying that, but I've learned from my mistakes, and now I'm pushing it forward to prevent people from making the same mistakes I have. I've covered more or less applications. Obviously there are questions which are in many different guilds. It changes with the type of guild. Like I said earlier, you have casual, semi-hardcore, hardcore. There are more or less the 3 categories. In a casual guild, you're not going to expect a lot of questions. In a semi-hardcore guild, it steps up slightly, but not too much. You would usually start expecting players to write a bit more, and obviously in a hardcore guild, you would want lots and lots of information, which is pretty standard. If people have any questions and would like to know more about applications, then you can feel free to leave me a message below, contact me on YouTube, or possibly message me in-game. I am on Ravencrest EU under TinaTurner with the guild Simply the Best, or you can contact my main account, Whiterain on Kazzak with Perfect Circle EU. Thanks for watching, and I hope this helped.